So the garbage man was like a glorious time, actually. It was beautiful being the garbage man. So I enjoyed it. So from like 2011 to about 2018 is when I got out, 2019. And what happened is really we had built the company or the brokerage up to like 26 different states we were moving material out of, um, about 5, 6 million in sales. And again, it doesn't sound like a high volume, but the margins are just amazing. And the business is great. Like we can operate out of anywhere. And part of in school, what I did is I created like basically a new business model and created a pro forma with that based on numbers in Cache Valley and the landfill and all that other jazz. But we were essentially sending a ton of mixed material or recyclables to California, and they were charging so much money in labor to process it. And then it was being resold again. And it's like, why are we doing this? We have this I-15 corridor. We were shipping like 200 loads a month down, just passing Cache Valley. So I'm like, let's vertically integrate. Like, let's bring in a bunch of the recyclables here to be sorted. And this was in like 2016. We started building the facility to do that. And there was two sides of that business. The other was construction and demolition waste. And it was like a bulletproof plan. Like everything was good. The markets were good. We were moving material great. Our margins were awesome. On the construction and demolition waste side of the business, it was a no-brainer because they were shutting down the landfill here in Logan and Cache County. So we had like this guaranteed stream of income. Anyway, I'm getting in the weeds a little bit,
This is awesome.
but basically what happened is we're 6 months into building, and there's no contracts in this business, especially here in the valley, because no one owns the landfill or the waste. Excuse me, no one owns the waste going to the landfill, and so there's no competitors, especially if the landfill shuts down. So we kind of had this thing by the jugular. Like we knew they were going to shut down. We start building, and about 6 months in, they announced that they're going to keep it open. So like half of our revenue, which was like so solid, which the bankers like saw the whole business plan. They're like, this is genius. Everyone's on board, right? Halfway through or 6 months into this, we have pylons in the air. They announced like, hey, we're going to keep it open for like 6 more years. So this is the county and city. So there's half our revenue there that would go to them because they're going to keep their rates really low. So we did a study and tried to convince them and the county to charge what it actually costs, $53 a ton, and so that we could at least compete on the same level. Because I'm like, let's compete. Like, I'm happy to compete, but we can't compete against a government subsidized entity. Like, it's impossible. So we lost that battle, and we were fine because it's like we had so much material and so much margin in processing the materials that were going to China, the plastics, the cardboard, the mixed waste. And then all of a sudden, the Chinese president decided to come up with an EPA, so like an environmental protection agency, which, believe it or not, they didn't have one. So,
Just
and
crazy.
it's bonkers, dude. It's bonkers when you look at it. Like the stuff that was going on in Chinese manufacturing is actually like really, there needed to be a change. Like it was bad. So what was happening is we were shipping the recyclables over there. They're being processed, the cardboard, the plastic bottles going into polyester, which is going into clothing, whatever else. And it's supplementing these virgin materials or raw goods that are going into the manufacturing process. But what's happening is there's like contamination, 5 to 10% of millions of tons. So, dude, they're just hucking it in the river. They're burying it out back. Like, it's no good, like what was going on in that world. And so it needed to stop. But the problem is it's literally the destination of all of the world's recyclables because it's the manufacturing hub of the world, right? So they literally one day just shut it off. Like we're only accepting like the cleanest material. So we had like containers on boats of like hundreds of thousands of dollars of material millions in material. It was massive. We're trying to go into like Vietnam, India with the product. Like we have nowhere to go. Supposedly they were dumping a bunch of stuff off in the ocean, container loads of stuff. It was a wild time because China had shut the doors and all these boats are on the water returning to China full of these recyclable materials. And so now I'm here with the plant. We built this big manufacturing, 58,000 square foot facility to process this stuff. I lose one side of the business and then now I lose the other. The market just falls out. So we double down. We go in harder. Like we got to get, like, I'm all in. I'm burning. I'm the guy that burns the boats. Like, just, if I'm in, baby, I'm in. And dude, I had some partners that were not in. Like, that's just the reality. And I don't want to speak negatively at all. It's just that was the case. And it led to essentially division. And I'm confident we could have figured it out if we stuck together as partners. But everyone's got to be willing, right? Like everybody's got to be in. And that wasn't the case. And so that all kind of fell apart. The brokerage continued. I'm no longer an owner of that. And we parted ways. And then the plant dissolved. Like I call it the plant. It's this recycling facility. We shut that down in 2018. And then that's how I got into real estate. So quick rundown. Sorry for the long journey there,
No,
but
it's great, man. It's a transition. I'm sure that transition was hard, right? Like impact
oh
on
yeah.
something that you built from what you said, 2011 to 2018. That's 7 years of your life, your hard work, tears, sweat, right? Like, what was that? How was that transition for you? I mean, it must have been pretty hard seeing that go down and try to figure out, oh, hey, what's next?
Dude, when you create a vision for yourself and like your future life, right? It's like that rug was ripped out from underneath me, and you've got to like your foundation, everything almost of what you thought and who you were, just disappears in a short period of time. So that's hard, I think. Like you got to go. I'm looking back saying this at the time I didn't understand or see it this way, but it's like you've got to re-identify and create a new vision for yourself. You have to. And it was dark times. And that's, Brian knows, we've talked, that's where I kind of got into the ultra running. I'm not a runner. Like I play football. I played football in high school. Like and I started running, and that like helped me through that so much because it was such a hard transition to literally just kind of recreate myself with real estate and basically just throw all that away, which I don't view it that way. It was a Harvard education I got. It was just really expensive.
Yeah, Alex, I'm curious, like for our listeners, that experience, like what's one thing that you probably learned the most out of that experience that has enabled you to find success in other avenues and pick yourself back up and get into real estate? Is there like a big learning from all of that that you just carry with you?
Yeah, there's so much, like there's everything from spiritual learning to business lessons, but I would say like the overreaching thing that I learned is I put so much into that. Like every day just grinding there, 18 hours. And it was I raised like 12 million bucks in all. And this sounds really funny, but this is how I view that is you need to leverage yourself like so much more. Like stop being the guy that does all the work, that bleeds and sweats. Like you don't need to do that. You need to figure out how to leverage yourself better. Cuz for 7 years I was grinding and I didn't have to do that. And I learned that with real estate. Like, in fact, the ironic thing out of that, here's an example of real estate play. That building that we built in the recycling deal, it cost us 2.3 million at the time to build. It was sold later for 4.7 million. So like that's like I got nothing out of the business. I almost lost everything. But we leveraged and financed that building, and it got us a couple $1,000,000 in equity. And so it sounds funny, but if I'm looking at from like a very objective standpoint, it's like leverage yourself to the highest extent and figure out what that means. Like how can you best leverage yourself and position yourself to receive and create the most value and also receive as much as you possibly can. Anyway.
No, I mean, I think that's the cool point. Like, leverage is a term we use so much. Like, it's in our everyday vocabulary in the real estate industry, generally talking about debt, right? Because it's just part of every project that we do. But flipping it on its head and thinking about personal leverage, I think it's like a super important avenue to pursue, because you just get way more out of it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it just I had this mentality of like you got to sacrifice, and then that's the other like almost spiritual side of it is it's like look, it's not that's not what is most important. Like I had this dream like we had 5 facilities I was going to build. They're all going to cash flow $1,000,000. Like the numbers were real. It was real, and it was all I was focused on, and I missed some like vital years of my kids. Like when they were really young. And no way. That's why I love real estate. It's like I'm not going to miss that because it's not worth it. So that's a huge lesson for me too. Like I'll never grind and be that guy that's 18 hours a day because I can never get that time back.
And I appreciate you sharing that, Alex. I'm curious, like, it sounds like, and you mentioned, like, it was a dark time between transitioning out of trash to or cycles to real estate. Like, who introduced you to the idea of running long distance? And do you mind sharing with our listeners some of the races you've done and maybe how that's propelled you to get out of the darkness? Do you mind sharing
Yeah.
some of that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I was listening. This is really funny, actually. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Courtney Dauwalter.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to understand like the context of where I was listening. I was listening to it alone in my office at the facility after we just let 50 employees go. It's literally me and my accountant. I locked myself in my office, just like I had to be there to wind down some of the stuff at the facility. It was the loneliest time. And it was literally like dark. Like it was a dark time. So I'm listening to this podcast and she's talking about this race called the Moab 240. And I'm like, and she's talking about like seeing a leopard in a hammock and like just how crazy it is and like this pain cave and suffering and like, and I'm like, dude, wait, she just ran 240 miles. Like that's impossible. And so I listened to this thing like I just like honed in, it just caught me. Sorry.
Good man.
This is awesome, man. This is raw.
So, and like I said, it was, I made a post about this, which is funny. I should delete this post probably. But it's like, look, my life insurance policy was worth enough to cover all my debt. And it was like, man, yeah, I was better off dead, right? And that's the point I was at. And so I'm listening to this. I go home that night and I just go up behind my house. I just start running. And dude, it was like talking to God again, you know? So anyway, sorry. But it was just magic for me. And I was like, you know what? After I ran, I think that night, I logged on and I figured out that Moab 240 race. Like, there's no qualification. So I'm like, let's go. I just signed up, paid the fee. I didn't have the money. I put it on a credit card and paid the fee, and I signed up for that Moab race. So that's how it started. First, and I just got into running, just became like therapy. And then being outdoors, like running on the trails and in the mountains, it just was magic for me. It saved me, man. So
Going from not running at all, 0 miles, maybe your suicides that you had to do in football practice in high school,
yeah.
to I think for everybody listening, like the Moab 240, you can't really emphasize enough how of like no joke run that is. This isn't going running your marathon down the street, right? Like walk us through how brutal that race is. And then, like, was that your first race that you ran as you took up running?
So I ran a race called like the Speed Goat before. That was the first ultra I did that was 32 miles. So that's the longest I'd run. And then I signed up for Moab the first year, and um, I only got like 48 miles, and I had a medical deal we can't talk about here on the podcast. No, I had a testicular torsion. And so they hauled me out of there, actually. I signed up the next year and finished it. But yeah, it's brutal. It's like you go from like 15 degrees to like 95 degrees. There's no cover in a lot of the areas. You're praying for water, man. But it's so cool. I mean, there's people out there, like everyone's there helping each other. It's not this atmosphere like where it's I'm gonna stomp on you to win. It's like, no, we're all working together to get to that finish line. But the Moab 240 is magic. Yeah. I mean,